time the lighting was off, and so you could not see me do the injector actually. This time you will.
Well, you might be wondering where this beautiful and very humble couple came from. Back in 2019, we spent the year building out our schoolie. After the build was done, we sold our house and traveled for a full year. Following that year of travel, we started to crave building again and getting something 4x4.
Here's how our completed injector looks, or how your injector will look once you get it from out of the truck or the van or whatever you have. Maybe you got it in a car, who knows? So this is a 7.3 liter injector. This is a early injector, so this is, I believe it would be 92, probably 94 through 99, where this exact injector. I'm not certain, so don't quote me on that. Basically what we're gonna do is, this one has new seals on it. The seal kits that are out today have blue seals, pink, and orange now. They used to just be all black, but now we have these nice colors, which is actually nice because if you're pulling out seals, old injectors, you can usually tell if they are new seals or if they've been rebuilt, or it helps differentiate between your injectors. So what we're gonna go ahead and do here is get one of these injectors apart. So I will show you how we do that. So unless you've built an injector before, and chances are if you have, you're not watching this video. If you've built an injector before, you'll have these two components here. So this piece here, we have a little pin in the side, and what this does is it's an injector holder. So you can put it in and slot this pin, and it slots in and holds your injector from twisting. Now you can put it in a vise this direction, and you'll be able to get the injector apart like that. The injector actually separates right here. There are threads that separate this injector. So from here, pretty much here down is your oil side, and from here up is your fuel side. If you buy a rebuild kit, so I went with this company, Bitterroot Diesel. This rebuild kit came with springs, these two tools, ball bearings, O-rings, so inner O-rings and outer O-rings, and I believe that's it. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull this injector out. I've already pulled this injector apart. There was some broken pins on the inside here, and that's why I had to order these pins in, so the injector is still apart, and I just had it in a bag. Now you're gonna have a couple springs. Oh, and the kit also comes with some specialty tools. So we're gonna just set all these parts out, and I am going to show you how they go. So if you were to just take your injectors, so here's those pins I was telling you about. If you were to take your injectors apart and dump them out, this is how it would look. And then I can show you here how to put them back together. We're gonna just take out every little piece. So you could use a magnet tray for this. I actually have lost parts on the magnet tray. They'll get like sucked up and caught underneath it. I'm not gonna use a magnet tray here. When you get your injector, it's gonna be together kind of like this, just like that other one I showed you. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this, put it in a vise. Well, before you do that, you wanna pull off your solenoid up top here. So the kit comes with a Torx bit for the top here. I think it's like a T20 or so. So you're gonna just take off this, and then you can pull it off and just set it upside down out of the way. So now we have this little guy here, which is a very strange star-shaped tool. And luckily this kit came with the tool. These are all the old ball bearings. I like to keep old parts like that just in case I drop a new one and I can't find it. I have the old one rather than tossing it in the trash can. I like, and I think you'll like too, is a set of long needle nose for doing this build. All these parts are pretty small, and if you're a mechanic, chances are you have big grubby fingers. Having a set of tweezers is very nice. So you're gonna take your weird star-shaped tool here. It's like a flower, and you'll put that on the top here, and I actually just brace this against the table and then take it on an impact and impact it off. Like I said, I've already disassembled this one, and the previous footage was too dark to show you anything. So you can take that off, and this screw you can actually disregard. These screws strip out really easy, so just get rid of that thing. And we can set this aside as well. So now we have 4 screws here, and you'll just take out with an impact. And now nothing is gonna fly at you. So you don't have to worry. There is a spring in here, but it's not gonna pop out and blow this thing out at you. So you want to just take out all these screws and we can just set that aside. So this part we're going to actually rebuild as well, and you can take off your little collar here, set that aside. So now you can see where this tool comes in. So this here can just come on out and set aside. And I believe in this kit you get a new one of these springs, these large springs here. So what I like to do is, if this was a new kit, I would just take this spring and toss it in a different pile and grab my new spring, so that way I'm not confusing them. We would take this raw component now, put it in our little holder, and go to the vise and slap this puppy on, and then you can break it loose and fully unscrew it. It'll be pretty tight all the way coming off, and again, nothing will pop out. Now you can pull that out, and I don't recommend dumping this out your first time. So you can take it off, put it to your bench, and you'll take out all of these components here. Then go ahead and take these parts, and if you have an ultrasonic cleaner, stick them in there and let them run, get cleaned, or do it by hand. All of these I've cleaned by hand just with a brass wire brush, and it's gotten them fairly clean. You should have 2 small pins and 4 large pins. So for some reason we have 3 small pins. Anyways, I'll show you the O-rings. So this O-ring here, you're gonna pop off, put a new one on. This little guy here, there's actually a special tool as well that comes in the kit. This tool here. So you'll put the tool in and then kind of just pop it like that. And there's an O-ring in here. So you're gonna have 3 internal O-rings. This is 1, this is 2, and then there's 1 in there. So you'll go ahead and pull this O-ring out and put a new one in. Then once that's done, that's all. Clean the parts off and then reassemble. Simple as that. And then this piece here is gonna go on the bottom. You can see the recess for the screws. And if you have it on top and you go to assemble, it'll correct yourself. You'll correct yourself. So for this here, what I like to do is just take it, hit it against the table, and it'll come to the edge here. See how that walked its way forward? So now what we can do is just take a socket that fits over there and hit down the socket a couple times. And it'll start coming out. And once it's further enough out, you can pull it out. Ain't a booger. There we go, popped out. So it's like a plunger here, okay? So you'll clean this off, clean off the inside, and then there's 1 O-ring that sits about this height here inside. And doubts you're gonna be able to see it. But there's an O-ring that sits right in there. So you're gonna take a pick, easiest with the 90-degree pick, you'll get it in there, pop it out. And then if you take that O-ring, fold it and put it in there, you can take your tweezers and kind of hold it down so it slips into that recess, and then you can just take your pinky and it'll pop all the way around. And you'll want to just use motor oil in there. And so again, oil side, so motor oil in there, or actually you could use diesel, either or. I used motor oil throughout the whole thing because I didn't have diesel. If you have diesel, you can use diesel on the fuel side and motor oil on the oil side. So once that's in there, lube this up, slide your plunger right back in. So we can set this aside right now. We'll go to your injector cup. I believe that's what this is called. So this was cleaned off. I clean off the inside, the outside, and then all of the parts in here. Usually your nozzle here will have a bunch of carbon buildup on it. So just scrub that off, get it all nice and clean. And we're gonna start with the nozzle. So we're gonna take 2 of our small pins and drop them right in these holes. So here's where the tweezers come in. Got 1 there and 1 there. Okay, I just launched that pin to Kingdom Come. So we have another. So, gosh darn it. 1 sec. Okay, we have 2 pins in there. So in the nozzle, and then actually in the inside here, there is a plunger. So you'll want to take that out, clean it out, and then you can just put the plunger right back in. Now I kind of just angle this sideways and drop it in, and then we're just trying to get that to sit down here. So during this whole process, you're gonna be twisting it a little bit as we drop parts in. So next we've got this big hog here, and notice how all these parts have 3 holes in them. Those 2 towards the top of the screen there are slightly offset. So those holes have no choice but to go the correct way. So you can grab it like this, and you'll see in those parts the correct way. Now this part doesn't have an up or a down, and you can just drop it in here. And those pins there, you're gonna go ahead and spin the bottom and make sure the top spins. So what I like to do though is to make sure it's not just sitting on top of those pins spinning, so I put my finger in there and put a little downward pressure to make sure that it's actually seated. So next we're gonna go with our little puck here. If you look at the wear marks, you can follow the wear marks. I just drop it in there and say whatever. I don't think it matters that much. So now we're gonna go with a new spring. It comes with a new one of these smaller springs. So we're gonna put it right in there. And then there's a large pin that goes down inside the spring. So it's gonna go right down there. Now let me show you a little diagram here. This kit actually comes with this diagram, which is super helpful. If you forget anything, it tells you exactly the order in which it goes in, and it tells you all the parts as well if you lose a part. So try not to lose a part. For instance, a lot of these pieces here, you have to buy an injector core in order to get these parts. And if you're doing an injector rebuild, chances are you're trying to save a little money, and I'm sure you don't want to buy a core. So the next thing we're going to do is take two of our larger pins, and they're going to go right on top of that piece we set in. So again, we put that puck, the spring, and then the large pin in the center of that spring. So we're going to go ahead and drop the two pins on those two off-centered holes. Okay, so those are in there. Now what we're going to do is take this piece here. Now this piece has three components to it. Well, four. You have this lower one here. You have this small little puck, which is called a check plate. So you have a check plate here. So this, let's see. Let me get all the terminology. So you have your stop, your check plate, your check ball, and your stop plate. So four total components that are going to go in next. We're going to start with our stop, and that's going to go with this little piece facing upwards. As you can see, the bottom has wear marks as well that are going to show that it sits on that spring. And this only has one way to go in due to those pins. Okay? No. Okay, I need to go do something. I'm sure you heard those chickens in the background. Well, they got loose. All right, we're back. We ended with our stop here. So remember, we just dropped that in, and of course it can only go one way. And occasionally I'll kind of stick my finger in there, hold the pin, and twist the bottom here, making sure it's all together. If all these components aren't together, it won't function properly. So now what we're gonna do is just take our stop plate, or our check plate here, and drop it in to where you would think it goes. I hope you can see that. Now there's a little less darkness going down there. And then we can just take our check ball and drop it down right into the slot where the check ball looks like it goes to. Now we're going to take our stop plate and look at the wear rings and try to just line up which side looks worn for what. And we're going to drop it there, and then that's that. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for now. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but this piece here, which is going to be your barrel here. You're going to replace your barrel ring here, this metal ring. It should come in your kit, and then as well as the ball bearing. So you can just take a pick and pry this off, pop it off, disregard the ring, and disregard your ball bearing. So now you'll put the ball bearing in, then put your ring back on and make sure it's seated correctly. And then I like to just kind of center it as well, because it could get a little be a little cockeyed. So now with this guy, we can take it, and there's conveniently a hole here so you can get your tweezers in and hold here. And you're going to go ahead and drop that right on in and make sure it's seated correctly. So you can look down in the hole and see if it's gone all the way down to that bottom, that stop plate that we were just using. But I also, again, put some friction on it and twist the bottom just to make sure. Now we have two larger pins. We're gonna set them right in the place just like all the other sides we did. So there was one pin in there and one pin in there. So now we have two pins inside of our injector. And again, just do a little twist test and we're good to go. So now we have our plunger right here, and then we have our spring for the plunger. Now I believe in this kit you don't get a new plunger spring or plunger or anything, and then these will go with the slotted side down and it fits right in. So now we're going to move on to our piston A valve body. That's what this is called. So there are two holes on the top of that, and we have our pins in there. So what we're gonna do is try to line up our pins and set it on. So see how it just slid down there? And now I'm going to move the bottom of the injector again and ensuring that the top can function. So I'm gonna try to spin it and make sure it's working. And it is, so perfect. So now we're gonna put a little downward pressure and twist at the same time. And we'll start those threads. And while you're threading, ensure that your injector nozzle is spinning, because again, everything needs to be lined up in there. So now we're gonna go ahead and set this back in, just like that, and take it to the vise, clamp it in our vise, and on the top of this nozzle here, it reminds you that it needs 75 foot-pounds, so you can just set that on, and we're gonna just go ahead and torque this to 75 foot-pounds. So this is an American unit of measure, and I'm guessing you're in America if you're rebuilding a 7.3 injector. I have no idea what the equivalent would be in Newton meters or anything like that. We're gonna just take it in the vise and tighten it down. All right, we are back with a nicely torqued injector. So 75 foot-pounds. Again, those pins just lock right in here, and I have had where this pin, one of my injectors was a little tight around here. I'm not sure why, but the pin got stuck and I basically just pull it out with some pliers. Not a big deal. Okay, so moving on. So that was the fuel side right there. So all of those O-rings and everything, you could have soaked in some diesel prior to installing this and had everything nicely oiled up and lubed. And of course, you don't want any O-ring to go dry, to be dry put in. So all of these were already pre-lubricated when I put them in. That's why I didn't show that process. But make sure you're oiling up your O-rings, whether it's with engine oil, assembly lube, or diesel. If you still have your vise around, you could definitely just slip this in and hold it for you, because you don't want to damage this injector nozzle. I don't have that. So now what we're going to do is take our spring, and let's see what this is. This is our poppet valve and our poppet spring. So we're gonna go ahead and just set those in, and they'll just slide on down and seat. So now we can take our top plate here, and again, there will be a little wear mark there. See how on the bottom of your screen, right there, there's that little piece sticking out, and you can see how that goes. So what we're gonna do is just correlate the two and put them right on like that. So now you're not gonna be able to press this down because that poppet spring. So just take your screws and go ahead and get them started. Now I couldn't find any torque specs for these Allens or these torque screws, so I just kind of tighten them down. Not too tight, not too soft. And now what I'll do is just go back and forth throughout them. The impact is not here right now. So tightening them down, evenly collapsing it on that spring. And I think that's pretty good for the torque. So this is probably about 20-30 foot-pounds. We skipped a step. So I've done this quite a few times, no big deal, but our collar here is not on, or they call this the clamp. This kit actually comes with shims to shim up your, I think this is called your poppet as well, or something, poppet funnel. Anyways, you can shim this up and it's supposed to help with cold starts. I'm not really sure, you'd have to look into that. I'm not gonna shim it at all for this, but one thing important is there is a hole on this side. So what I'd like to do is we're gonna go ahead and take this back off because I messed up. So we know it needs to go that way. So we're gonna make sure that this funnel's facing downwards, and then this portion is going to be facing that screw. So we're gonna look at the wear marks, match the wear marks with here. Wherever that hole is, we're gonna match with there. And then we can just set on, get a thread or so in, and now we're just gonna tighten it down. That's how it should have been done from the first. Okay, there we go. We got those all in, looking good. And again, if you see a hole, random hole here, it's on the wrong side. So now what we're gonna do is move to our, this is called an oilature. So now this direction is important. You're basically just going to put it this way. Nope, maybe it's this way. Nope, maybe it's, believe it's this way. Let's check here. Yes, so it's this direction. Your solenoid, it's gonna line up with your solenoid here. So you don't want the, think of it as like magnetic poles. You're not gonna want the poles going opposite directions like that. You're gonna want them to go the same direction. Now this kit came with a new screw for here, so that's why I was saying you could disregard that top screw. So it came with the screw and the proper sized Allen for it. Now what we're gonna do is just put that on here. Make sure it's clean. And right in the center hole, it'll drop down and then tighten. So again, what I like to do is I just set it on the edge of the table and just tighten it down a bit. Again, no torque specs for that, just snug. So we want that facing opposite of this spout here. So this is important which direction it goes. There's two little channels here. You want those facing upwards, and then you want it actually facing this way. So you want that little cutout facing your wire harness plug. And then that is all going to face this direction here. And we are gonna just go ahead and put some screws in, hand tighten the screws down, and then tighten these up. So it actually comes with the other Torx you're gonna need for the top. And these are not very tight, just snug. I'm sure you could find some torque specs online. Okay. So now we can just set it like this on our table, and we are gonna go ahead and get our outer O-ring kit. So before you started this, if you had the injector just like this here, go ahead and take off all your O-rings. I just find it easier to get those out of the way and declutter yourself a bit. So now we have our new kit, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure these are oiled before. I'm gonna just go ahead and use some assembly lube. We are gonna start, I can lay these out. If you're buying them online, chances are you're gonna see them laid out in the pictures. So they'll be like something like this in the pictures. Basically what we're gonna do is install it just like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some lubricant on this. So you're gonna have a metal ring that goes around. And the easiest way to do all of these is you're gonna start with one side and then just run your finger around and it'll snap the rest of it down. And we're gonna just go right into this bottom recess here, just like that. So now we're gonna go ahead and move on to a flat O-ring. So see how that's flat, and then you'll have one round O-ring. The round O-ring is gonna sit further up towards the nozzle. So again, just work it around till it's down, and then you can just seat it down there. I still have plenty of this lubricant on my fingers, so I'm just sliding that on. So these three O-rings are gonna be your easiest. This pink one here is gonna be your hardest O-ring. So a couple little tricks, get it nice and lubricated. It's gonna be your number one trick. And then fight through the pain is your second trick. So you're gonna wanna go ahead and push down this back so you can get it down to here. And this is your tightest O-ring. So you're gonna wanna push down and get it down into its recess here, and then slide your fingers around. So I'll try to show you here. So just push and then slide your fingers. If you have brittle fingers, that's gonna hurt. I guess you could take like a tool and put it down, but you don't really want to scratch or puncture your O-ring. So again, just fight through the pain. So now we're gonna take our orange O-ring and set it right on top, just like that. And then we have a copper washer here, and it has a convex and concave side. And it dropped. Let's see if you can see here. So one side's convex and one side's concave. So one side's pushing out, one side's dented in. The dented inside, or concave, is gonna be touching this surface, and the convex or pushed outside is going to be facing up. This is the same way you should have taken off the nozzle. And you would have taken off this copper O-ring and just get a pick under there. Actually, my favorite way to do it is to take a razor with a scraper on, and then you get under there and kind of just work your way around. Usually these are pretty difficult to get off on dirty injectors. Thank you for following along with me. That is a complete injector. So now we have a complete injector. There's 2 of them together. Now you only have 7 more to go. Good luck, because it is a tedious process, especially if you are cleaning these by hand. When you pull these injectors out, I recommend labeling them. So I put a 876 per cylinder, so because it is important to put these back in the cylinder, the correct cylinders, that is. Before you go ahead and install this, take a cup of oil, put this in the oil, and just let it bubble up that oil and soak it all up, and then you'll take it all nice and dripping oil, you know, hold a rag under it and then drop it down into your head right where they need to go. This is a very important step. So here's your head, which you would be seeing. So your injectors are gonna go right in here, right where you took them out. Now your glow plugs are going to be, so they're gonna be like that. Your glow plugs are gonna be right there. Right there. Let me rub a light. So your glow plugs, see that little hole right there in the very center of your screen? That's your glow plug. Whether you're replacing your glow plugs or not, which I recommend it, they're fairly cheap and it is an issue on these 7.3, so might as well, if you're doing the injectors, replace your glow plugs. So you'll pull that out regardless of what you're doing, because once you pull these out, motor oil is going to fall down and get inside your cylinders. So your cylinders here, they'll fill up with motor oil, and then when you go to start your motor, you can actually hydro lock it off of the oil that's fallen in. So you have to take out all your glow plugs, and then I recommend taking rags and covering all these, because it will spray oil out, and you're gonna just crank over your motor a couple times to clear your cylinders out of oil. And then you can go ahead and put your glow plugs back in, and you'll be set. And then you hook up your harness and you're good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful for you. If so, leave a like and comment and all that jazz. And hopefully I can bring you some more helpful tips in the future. But hopefully this motor will get back together soon here and I don't have to share any more tips.